How can prison break an innocent man? A 19-year-old guy named Reggie Cole mistakenly ended up in one of the strictest prisons in America, where he had to fight the local crime kingpin nicknamed the Devil. And that's not an inoculation for a movie, but the real story of when you have no choice but to kill. Creepy, right? But let me start from the very beginning of this drama. Reggie was just a kid when his family moved to Los Angeles in 1985, as you can guess. They didn't choose the most affluent neighborhood. Constant violence, brutality, and an abundance of street gangs. Reggie was the youngest brother among 2 boys and 2 girls. He was only 10 years old when his older brother Kenny, who was 15, joined one of the neighborhood gangs. Ever since they were young, the brothers had faced gang fights and even full-blown shootouts. One day, members of a hostile group staged a surprise attack on Kenny's gang. They got into a car, took guns, and attacked the Cole family's neighborhood, shooting houses out the window. Yeah, just like in Hollywood action movies. That's how Reggie lost his big brother. Needless to say, the kid was completely devastated. He tried to concentrate on his studies to distract himself and try to forget what happened to his brother, but you just can't get it out of your head. His family tried to help him through this situation and his frustrations with life, but Reggie's surroundings had too much influence on him. Every year, he became more and more distant from his studies until he finally decided to drop out and plunge into the world of crime, following in his brother's footsteps. Eventually, his parents divorced, leaving only his mother. Reggie began growing and dealing marijuana. Although he didn't commit any serious crimes, he was dealing drugs, so it was no surprise to anyone when he was first arrested at the age of 16. The police saw him on the street and tried to ask him questions, but he refused to cooperate and tried to leave, which led to his arrest. But his life changed dramatically in 1995. He was arrested again, but for the murder of a man in his neighborhood, which he said he did not commit. The guy had a bad reputation, was in bad company, and was seen near the murder scene. The court didn't take the case seriously, and Reggie was found guilty. He was given a life sentence, and the guy was sent to Calipatria prison, one of the most cruel and dangerous prisons in America. It is a complex consisting of several buildings stretching over a large deserted area. Reggie was nervous from the moment the bus left the courthouse, and the closer they got to the prison, the more anxious he became. Can you imagine the extent of his frustration with life? As soon as they crossed the first gate of the jail, the first thing Reggie noted was the smell of manure that filled the place from the jail's animal yard. Reggie lowered his head to his bound hands, trying to ignore the smell, but to no avail. The odor was too pungent. The cells in this prison were like a tomb. 4 walls and a cement ceiling with no windows. Even the door was a metal plate with a small hole in the middle that opened and closed from the outside. There was also a double bed, a sink, and a toilet. When Reggie first entered the room, his roommate frowned and just turned his back to the wall, not even a grating. That wasn't customary here, it was every man for himself. Reggie didn't know who he was, and didn't want to provoke a conflict by mistake, so he lay silently on his bunk. But he didn't yet realize where he was. The realization came soon, when a group of prisoners broke into their cell and began to humiliate his neighbor. First verbally, and then simply beaten and assaulted right in front of Reggie, who kept silent and tried not to draw attention to himself. This was repeated several times a week, and that's when the boy realized that he needed to know how to stand up for himself. Reggie noticed that many of the prisoners had homemade knives, so he had to make his own. The only tool he had was his toothbrush. Using a stone, Reggie kept sharpening it until it was sharp and ready to use. Every day the prisoners have the right to go to the outside of the prison, and here it was like the best American movies, with everyone standing in clusters and a clear division into gangs. Reggie would have been happy to find protection, but most of the gangs demanded money or some kind of favor to prove loyalty. Usually it was theft, drugs, or even murder. Reggie tried to observe the situation from a distance without attracting attention because he knew that if he attracted attention, it would be like a death sentence for him. Although he tried to avoid trouble as much as possible, one day while he was walking in the prison yard, a group of prisoners suddenly surrounded him. Reggie, being pressed up against the fence, felt the eyes of all the prisoners on him. Everyone in the yard understood what was going on there, so he realized if he would bitch about such aggression, he would suffer the fate of his cellmate. Everyone would see him as easy prey. Reggie started to aggress back, waving his arms and pushing, trying to get the guards' attention without being a wuss. And it worked! He behaved sharply and defiantly, which allowed him to start gaining a reputation among the prisoners. After this incident, he was approached by a gang called 49 with an offer to join their ranks. After all, it was the only way for him to survive in this place, but there was one problem. All these gangs were subordinate to a man who positioned himself as the king of this place. And as you can imagine, that's who Reggie had to fight. Eddie Clark, who was nicknamed El Diablo, had complete control over the prison. For him, it was not only a home, but also a lucrative business. There was a constant flow of drugs and illicit goods inside the prison, and all these operations were controlled by El Diablo. He created a small drug empire right inside the prison, and everyone here was afraid of him and tried to avoid him. Even the guards. Everyone in the prison knew the story of El Diablo, who, although he was 34 years old only, had already spent 20 years of his life in prison. As a teenager at the age of 13, he ended up in a penal colony after attacking another teenager and beating him to death. They were in the carjacking business, but didn't split the proceeds. Oh, by the way, what do you even do if your car gets stolen in America? What if you get into an accident? Where do you go for help? Where to find a competent lawyer? How to get compensation if you don't have insurance? Car Accident America has helped get $21 million in compensation for their clients. Here, you will be sure to have all your questions answered. Link in the description. El Diablo was ferocious from a very young age. When he turned 18 and got out of prison, he broke into an old woman's house, attacked her, and killed her son, who was trying to protect her. That's when he got a life sentence. This beast fully deserved his title. The problem was that El Diablo was capricious and could even suddenly lash out against his closest followers. No one was safe with him, and of course, since he was king in his place, he always got his way regardless of the circumstances. For the next 2 years, Reggie led a relatively quiet life in prison, staying away from El Diablo and not getting into trouble or feuds. The jaded teenager who had entered this prison at the age of 19 had grown into a 24-year-old young man with strong muscles and a steely temperament. Unfortunately for him, he needed it all. What happened? How did he cross El Diablo's path? In October 2000, inmates were in the outer yard and one of them picked up a pebble and threw it at the back of one of the guards. Why? Apparently for weakness. The guards immediately ordered all prisoners in the yard to lie on the ground for inspection. During the search, one of the guards saw a homemade knife lying on the floor. Someone had dropped it before the inspection so that it would not be discovered that he had it. The guards did not know that the knife belonged to El Diablo's cellmate, who was his closest-eyed and most trusted person. The warden picked up the knife and asked the inmates to whom it belonged. There was silence. Not one of them uttered a word, although many knew the name of the owner. To surrender a comrade to El Diablo was tantamount to a death sentence. Everyone remained silent and waited. At that moment, El Diablo himself was lying on the ground among the other prisoners. He raised his head and began to look around, looking for someone he could accuse. By chance, his eyes fell upon Reggie. He was lying on the ground like the other prisoners, with a brush for painting the fence in his hand. El Diablo raised his hand and pointed at Reggie, telling the guards, "That one, that one. That's him, the owner of the knife." In the few seconds that followed, Reggie's mind began to think about the future, and he began to do his calculations. If a weapons charge was added, it would have no effect on his sentence, since he was already sentenced to life in prison. But what would change was his status and reputation among the prisoners. And in front of my eyes was still the picture of the raped neighbor who couldn't stand up for himself. As soon as he agreed to a false accusation, everyone would see him as a weak man. As soon as the guards asked Reggie about the knife, his answer was, "No, it's not mine. It was just a few words, but it changed his life forever." What happened next? Reggie officially became the enemy for El Diablo. Everyone was shocked after that phrase came out of Reggie's mouth, even the guards. No one could challenge the prison king's words, much less cross him. It was a challenge and a spit in the direction of authority. During the weeks that followed, Reggie was always on high alert, expecting that El Diablo or one of his henchmen might attack him at any moment. Even when he slept on his bed at night, there was a shiv under his pillow. Outside, he tried to stay close to the guards or in a place where their eyes would be on him so El Diablo couldn't kill him quietly. It went on like that for a month, until one day on a walk in the outer courtyard, Reggie noticed El Diablo moving right at him through the whole lot. He didn't even try to talk him down or sneak up on him stealthily, he just walked up and stabbed him. It wasn't a fatal blow, but an open declaration that Diablo would not be stopped by anyone, not even the guards. Reggie put his hand over the injection site as blood gushed out, and none of the prisoners who saw what happened tried to help him. Everyone turned away as if they saw nothing, even the guards. None of them tried to intervene, and Reggie continued to apply pressure to his wound to reduce the amount of blood flowing out of him. He had no choice. Kill or die. No one would save him. The guard tried so and so to stop the blood until the bell rang a quarter of an hour later, signifying the end of recess. All prisoners had to return to their cells, but before they did, they had to line up and go through a regular search. El Diablo was in the front, and Reggie was the third or fourth prisoner behind him. The boy was holding on to his wound and trying to hide it from the guards, but that wasn't its only secret. He was also hiding his knife, which he had taken from his hiding place. Remember what I said about the shiv from the early days? He buried the knife in a hole so he could use it when he needed it and not be afraid of searches. As El Diablo turned his back to look around, he looked at the prisoners behind him, and Reggie stood in the crowd among them. El Diablo looked at him with disdain and a sarcastic smile, while the guard was still inspecting. Reggie's temples throbbed. Either comply or snitch, kill or be killed. As the guard bent down to inspect Devil's legs, Reggie suddenly lunged forward and attacked him, delivering a fatal blow to the neck. Blood spattered, the guard grabbed a pepper spray and ordered him to lie on the ground. All the prisoners obediently complied, and Devil collapsed, clutching his hand over the wound from which blood was gushing. Half an hour later, when the doctor finally arrived, the king was dead. Reggie didn't deny his guilt, he didn't try to justify himself, he killed, for he had no choice. You would think it was over. Reggie was already serving a life sentence, and for a murder like this, he would definitely get the death penalty. But fate decided something different. Remember when I said that Reggie should never have gone to prison in the first place? Despite what little evidence there was in his favor, his lawyer began to doubt his guilt in the first murder. He brought up the case, interviewed all the witnesses, and then decided to have an independent ballistics test done, which showed unequivocal results. Reggie couldn't have killed the guy because the bullet came from above and Cole was below, as absolutely all the witnesses said. As a result, the guy who didn't kill was forced to do it but already in prison. Reggie got out after 16 years, having served time for his real murder, but having received compensation for the previous false accusation. The guy decided that even on freedom, he would continue to fight and founded his own foundation, which helps prisoners in controversial situations. By the way, he also spent all his money, which he received as part of the compensation, to help others. Well, who but Reggie Cole knows about how prison fixes things? Tough, huh? Unfortunately, innocent people suffer because of police mistakes and sloppiness, because human error is everywhere. It's even scary to think about how many of these Reggies could be in jail. Thanks for watching, and subscribe to my channel.